Good morning, folks. Today we're back out of Dad's shop and I got a couple of lanterns to work on today. And if you watched my video from 2 weeks ago from up at the Cornstalk Lantern Festival, you saw these two lanterns in that video. It's the two that were in the box marked free. Everybody walked right past these. I got up there Friday early afternoon. They were sitting there then. And Saturday evenings when I finally grabbed them and took them back to my camper after everybody had been walking past them. And initially there was 3 of them in the box and somebody took one and left the other 2. So I ended up eventually grabbing them, taking them back to my camper, brought them home with me. And they are both, I don't know if the camera will be able to pick it up, but they are both August of 1943. Which makes both of these a 220 BX. The BX lanterns are supposedly hard to find, but somehow I have ended up 4 times in a row. Yeah, I'll bet the camera won't pick that up. But they are August 1943, both of them, and somehow I've ended up getting 4 August 1943 220 BXs. Now these two are both pretty rough, but they are, I don't know if we got a magnet here that I can show very well. But they're steel fount, they're steel air tubes on them. The generator in this one is not a steel generator, but the directional disc on there, even if I stay away from the screw in the center of it, directional disc is a steel painted directional disc. I don't know. Pump is steel. These are definitely 220 BX wartime lanterns when they were making everything with steel because all the brass is being used for the war effort. So somehow I've ended up with 4 of these lanterns over the last couple of years that are all wartime 220 BXs. These two are both pretty rough condition. So my plan is, I got the lantern vise right here on the table. I'm gonna throw each one of these in the lantern vise and just completely tear it down, all the way down to pulling the pickup tube out of the founts, and we're going to lay all the parts out here on the table and pick the best parts from both of them and put them back together and see if we can make one working lantern, and the other parts we'll just throw back together on the other one to have spare parts laying around here. So let's get one of these chucked up in the lantern vise and start tearing it apart. First things first, we can take, whoop, this one had an old square 1/4 inch nut for the vent nut on it. Take the vent off of that one. This one's got, I think this was one of the old nuts that had like it's either an old wing nut or it was one of them that had like the loop on the top of it that some lanterns had, but it's broken off. That's what was on that one. But they both got steel burner tubes on them. We'll pick which one's the best. This one, at least the valve is all complete. This one's missing the valve wheel and the generator's out of it. So maybe this burner mechanism will be better, but we'll see once we get it apart. We'll pick and choose the best parts from both of them and put them together into one. Okay. See. Guess we can get the camera in there a little bit closer on that, but surprisingly enough, that screw came right loose. I don't know if this is a 1-piece or a 2-piece burner tube on this one. It might be a 2-piece where that little section that goes down through the bottom of the cage is actually separate from the top. turning. Nope, and I don't know if the camera can see it, but the whole thing is turning, so it's a one-piece burner tube. I don't remember for sure which models had the two-piece. Ooh, that's tight. Like it's been together for a long time. That is just not the best tool for the job right there. Pair of channel locks would be better for grabbing that right there, especially since it's already broke loose now. It'll be easy to choose which fount's good. One of the founts has a big old slug of solder on the bottom of it, so somebody's repaired it in the past, so that'll definitely be the worst of the two founts. But everything else, we'll just compare the parts as we put them back together and choose whichever is the better of the two. This has got one correct burner cap and one burner cap off of something else on there. The smaller one should be the correct one for this. And here's my little wrench that we put a bend in, and it reaches right down in there. Perfect on these to loosen up that nut. Otherwise, you can get a regular wrench in there, but it's not easy. If you got an old cheapo wrench you can heat up and give it a bend, that makes it a lot easier. Now I know I've showed this on other videos before, but the way that I get this valve assembly out of there is I just take an adjustable wrench, adjust it so that it fits snug right down over that, and then you can use a another wrench or screwdriver or something to stick through the top. Oh, that wasn't very tight at all. I think that's taken, yeah, that's taken all of it clear down to the fount, all in one piece. So there's a possibility somebody's had this apart before. And maybe the reason is because there's no good parts left on either of these, because it was at a place with a whole bunch of lantern collectors. So maybe whoever brought it there and put it for free knows that there's really not much of anything left that's any good on these. I don't know, but we'll find out. This is the one. Yeah, that's the one that's got the big gob of solder on the bottom of the fount, so I probably will not be using that fount. Let's take my pump out of there and see what it looks like. Oh, looks decent. Leather doesn't look too bad. It's actually kind of flexible, not terrible. I think I'm even going to go ahead and pull both the check valves out of them while we're tearing them down. Just go ahead and tear it completely down and check each part. We'll try to use whatever seems the best of every single part off of both of these. Y'all have seen the check valve tool before. Hopefully this is... Ooh, that might be the check valve that's too small for my check valve tool. That check valve tool just about disappears down inside of there too. That, I need to get one of the check valve tools that's got the larger teeth on one end and the smaller ones on the other. Yep, that definitely looks like the smaller size in there. So that's probably not gonna work to get that out of there. If we don't need it, if the other one works fine, then we'll just leave that one in there. Ooh, that's tight. I hate using pliers on a cap, but that cap already has all the threads or all the knurl on the outside of it chewed off, so somebody's been using pliers on that for a long damn time. Ooh. And the cap is seized to the fount too. That didn't sound good. I don't know if I just broke the screw or if it popped loose. Nope, it popped loose. Oh, that's a crusty looking mess right around there. Camera right down here, you can see, look where that was on there. But hopefully the other fount is better shape than this one, and we don't have to worry about this one. All right, I'm gonna pause the camera for a minute, and I'm gonna put this in the vise so I can get the two main parts of this valve assembly apart, and then I'll come back. Okay, I popped the collar out of the way so I could get this part gently clamped in our vise, then I could unscrew the two parts of the burner assembly from each other. Whoops. There, we got the cage separate. We got the part with the tip cleaner eccentric in there. You can see that the tip cleaner little eccentric pops up when you turn it, comes back down. It feels good and tight, so I don't see any reason why that won't work. Then here's the bottom half of the valve. This one, the valve wheel's gone off of it and somebody's been turning it with pliers and it's completely rounded off to nothing. So hopefully the one on the other one's in better shape. We can pop this tube out of there, the pickup tube, so we can clean that up. There's that over there. There's a little rod and a spring in there. That tiny little rod goes down. I know I've told this on other videos before, but with the camera focus on that, that hole in the bottom of there, when you crack the valve open a quarter turn to light it, that rod is sticking out through that hole, and it's got that hole plugged so that you're pulling vapors in from these holes up here at the top, and those fuel vapors from the top half of the fount are what lights the lantern and gets it burning. Then when you open the valve all the way, this rod slides up, unplugs that hole, and lets it get full liquid fuel to vaporize and burn. Usually whenever you have one of these apart, it's a good idea to give that spring a little stretch too, to kind of tighten it back up in there. I don't know if we'll even be using that one or if we'll use one out of the other one if it looks better, but that's what's in there. That's pretty much all tore down. I could take the tip cleaner lever out and drop that little eccentric block out of there, and I could take the valve stem out of here, but there's no need to take those apart. I can spray carb cleaner through it with those together. So I'm going to get this fount out of here, bring this one over and blow it apart just like I did this one, so we got all of them all in pieces spread out here. That's a little bit loose on that one too. I'm thinking somebody's had both of these apart at some point because nothing's super tight on them. The other one had no generator in it, so we got to pull the generator out of this one. Hopefully it's good, but if it isn't, I have got some generators that'll fit this lamp. Then we got to turn that tip cleaner, if it'll turn. Oh, it's pretty tight. Turn it to the up position to get that unhooked. But it is pretty snug. So that makes me wonder if I could just get the whole damn thing out in one piece, because that part works fine off of this lantern. So I wonder if that whole thing will just thread out of there in one piece. And of course that's turning the air tube out of here, but I can't thread the air tube out because the generator is still in there and won't go all the way through. So let's see if we can get down on here and get the whole thing to break loose here. Oh yeah, it's not too tight. I think somebody's had these lanterns apart before. That's not too tight at all. So we'll just thread the whole assembly out of there together. There we go. All right. I'm going to spray some penetrating oil on that. Let it set for a few minutes, and maybe we'll come back and try to salvage this generator, because I was hoping to get one of two of these lanterns going using only the parts from these two lanterns. But if I have to, I've got a generator I can put on it. I'll give this a spray of penetrating oil and set it off to the side over here. Okay, well, let's continue tearing this poor filthy lantern apart. This thing, I'm afraid to see what the inside of this fount's going to look like, because there's been old black nasty stuff leaked down over the outside of this over and over again. It leads me to believe that they were probably burning some pretty nasty gas in this thing at some point. Funny thing was, look at the pump though. When I was trying to push the pump in earlier, it's springing back. So the pump leather is already making good contact and trying to pump air in there. Ooh, that's tight. I cracked that loose and I heard gurgling, so there's pressure coming out through the check valve. Alright, let's set the camera back up over here. There was a little bit of pressure in the fount, so we know that the fount holds pressure. Let's see if we can get this fuel cap off of here. This is just a newer one-piece replacement fuel cap. Nothing special. I don't mind the newer fuel caps though. If they're on a newer lantern, that doesn't bother me, but I like to have one that's more correct for an older lantern. Doesn't smell that bad. Doesn't look that bad in there. Maybe we're not in as bad a shape as I was fearing there.
Well, it looks bad down there.
Yeah, it does look bad. It's a mess. Let's get this knob and direction disc off of here and set it off to the side. Then I can get the collar out of the way. This is the way I prefer to take them apart. The other one just came apart with the whole assembly out of the fount in one piece. Well, this is not good news. I just looked down in here. That is a mess. Somebody's soldered all the way around that on there. So that's interesting. So we've either got a tank that's got solder on the bottom or a tank that's got solder on the top of it. It's not a ideal situation in either. I would just as soon not use a fount that's been soldered back together. It leads me to believe that maybe this one that I had counted out in the first place is the better shaped one of the two of them. That's a mess.
Well, it just depends why they put
Yeah.
solders over.
Well, I guess it'd be because it was falling apart or leaking.
Yeah.
Let's see how tight this is. Oh, that's in there snug.
Probably soldered in.
It doesn't look like it. It looks like the solder's all below it. But
Yep, sure does. There's one different screwdriver.
here, I got this wrench right here. That's what I was looking for. I can put that in there. No, that wasn't too bad. But I'll say, the one with the solder on the bottom that I thought was no good looks more promising than all that solder gobbed up around there. Let's see what our... Oh, well, that doesn't look too bad at all, really. So possibly, I don't know, the inside of that fount must not have been as bad as I expected it to be. I don't know. But I do know we got two lanterns that are pretty well tore apart. I don't know if this one has the correct size. No, check valve tool dropped in on that one. That's weird. You'd think that they would both have the same check valve in it. But I do also know that that check valve is already leaking, so if the one that's in there works, I don't see any reason to take this one out to try to change it. Well, that's a shame. The bottom of this one looks pretty darn nice, but that's a mess. Sticker's not in too bad a shape on this one. I guess they're pretty comparable. Both of them have halfway decent stickers on them yet. All right, well, let's reassess what we got going on here. Okay, so here's kind of a rundown of what we're looking at here. This one has one gob of solder on the bottom of it that I thought looked pretty bad until I looked at this mess, and then that makes that one look a little bit more favorable.
Look, it's been leaking.
Yeah. So this is the vent off of this one, tank, cage, all the internal parts, the fount, the vent, the cage, all the internals off of this one. These parts will not come apart, but I've got this eccentric block off of this one that's really good. This one had a good knob on it, and like where the knob slides on, all that stuff's not destroyed. So I think I'm going to try to get this pulled apart here real quick and spray some carb cleaner through there and see. It's been leaking too. You can see that it's been dripping out of there, but that could just be the packing. So I don't know. Maybe the packing's better on this one than it is on this one. I'm going to just spend a few more minutes here tearing this stuff apart, looking and seeing what we got, and see if we can put enough parts back together to make one lantern that'll work, do a pressure test on it, make sure it's not leaking any, and see if we can put these two junk lanterns together and make one working lantern here. That's interesting. The first one tore apart the pickup tube, and they usually do have a 3/8 nut, or like 3/8 on there you put a wrench on. This one's round. There's no flats on it.
What?
I don't know if I can get a smaller wrench and get it down there at the bottom and just turn it from that piece, but it's not worn off. There's just no flats on there to get a wrench on. It still broke loose. I didn't know for sure if that whole thing had spin out or if just the cap had come off there, but it broke right loose and the whole thing's coming out, so that's not an issue. Thread that out of there. Should be the same thing. There's a little metal stem, there's a spring, all that's there, so that can be some carb cleaner sprayed through it and see if it'll work. Ooh, I figured that. Okay, I'm going to take this to the vise. I'm going to heat it up with our little hand torch. Heat it up good and hot. See if we can get it to break loose, because if I can't get that to break loose, then I'm not going to be able to use the parts from either one of these to try to... I'm trying to do this with as few parts. If I could get that generator to come out, I'll still even try to use that same generator. Try to use as many parts as I can just from these two lanterns and try to make one work. So I'm going to put this in the vise and apply a little heat to it. I'm going to heat this up. You can see there's this old nasty gas residue and stuff that's boiling up around that packing nut. So it probably burns regular out of gas and hot cement just has glued everything together. Yep, there we go. That broke it right loose. I'm going to turn it in and out several turns as it cools down a little bit here so it doesn't seize back up. But it's broke loose now. Gotta make sure I don't get too hot and melt the center out of my knob either. Okay, that's still a little warm. I got everything apart there. I even threaded the packing clear out of there. It doesn't look that bad. I don't know why. You could definitely see, I must not have brought that nut back over here. You could definitely see that it had been leaking around the packing and dripping fuel out the bottom of that, but it doesn't look that terrible now. That packing, I've seen worse than that. Maybe they just didn't have it snugged down tight enough. I don't know. But I'm gonna hit all these with some carb cleaner and try to clean them up a little bit. See if the carb cleaner passes through all the passages in here like it should. Ugh, the stuff that's running out is brown and nasty. We'll get this old Scotch-Brite and we'll clean all this up a little. I'm not trying to polish anything on these or make them look new. I am just trying to take the parts of two of these, put them together into one, and see if I can make it work. But I'm getting carb cleaner going both directions through there when I spray it through, so I know the passages are not blocked in there. I'm going to take it over above the floor drain over there and spray a whole bunch more carb cleaner through it just to try to get it cleaned out a little bit. But I definitely think that that valve will work, and I don't think that packing's so bad that I can't snug that packing down and get it to hold. So I wonder if that's a steel nut. The jam nut's steel. That's why I was polishing on it and it didn't look like it was shining up like the other brass parts were. BX does not have very much brass in it. Everything they could make out of steel they did. Okay, that's about good enough on that. Like I said, I'm not polishing here. I'm just trying to get the gummy crap off of here. That ought to work. Spray a whole bunch more through here over the floor drain. All right, let's thread this all back together. That packing just slides down in there. Once you get it worked down in there a little ways to where the threads catch, you can just put the knob back on there and use the knob to thread that down in there a little ways. Then slide your jam nut down on there. And I've had good luck with just going hand tight like that, and then put your knob on there and back the knob out, and then hold on to the knob and the jam nut. Turn them a few turns down together and back that back out again. There, it feels like it's snug already. Until you get down to where that's snug, that feels pretty good. That's moving in and out smooth. It's not excessively tight or excessively loose to where I think it would leak around the packing. And I'm not going to tighten that jam nut till I have it all back together. Then we'll just snug it a little bit when it's on the lantern. So there's the valve assembly I'm going to use. I'm going to use the same pickup tube that was on that because I can see daylight down the middle of it. So I'm going to give that spring a little gentle stretch. And I'm going to spray a little bit of carb cleaner through this pickup tube just to make sure there's nothing in there that's going to plug anything up. Drop that down in there. I don't know if the camera will focus so that you can see how that comes out the end there. I know I've tried to show it before, but it never really shows up well on the camera. Oh, here we go. I'll try and thread it on the wrong side. That makes a difference. Snug that up. It doesn't have to be super tight. So there's the whole valve assembly from the fount through the knob and up to where our eccentric block for the tip cleaner goes on there. Now this fount got a little debris in it, so I'm going to have to flush that out. But I'm wondering, I can't get the check valve out of here. I wonder if I could blow some air in there somehow and see if that check valve lets air pass through it. Oh, here. Let's see, cover that. Cover both of those holes. See if I can just let air pass through it, and I don't hear anything leaking back by. And it was holding pressure in there, so that check valve might be fine. I do have some paint at home that is pretty darn close to this color. I need to bring it out and just keep it out here, because if I had it here, I'd put some around the top of this fount. But since I don't have it here, that means that sometime when I'm at home, I'm probably going to end up at least pulling the top part back off of this, because I'm not worried about making it look pretty, but I'd like to stop that rust from advancing anymore. So I've got some Rust-Oleum here that looks
It's 100 green.
Fairly close to that. Alright, I'm going to pause the camera then. I'm going to clean out this fount. I'm going to put some denatured alcohol in there. I don't think it's excessively rusty. I just think there's some debris in there. So I'm going to put some denatured alcohol in there, shake it around, dump it out 2 or 3 times. And then I'm going to take this steel wool, knock the loose rust and stuff off of there, and just do a light spritz of green paint around the top of this fount to help seal that back up a little bit. I don't even want to get very far away from just that area. Just try to cover up where the rust is bad. Alright, I got the fount cleaned out. I sprayed a little bit of spray paint on it. Not making it look pretty, just covering up the rust a little bit. I found even more solder on the bottom of that tank, but I still think it's better than the other one, so we're going to use it. I'll give it a pressure test before we fire it up, but I'm not that concerned because after I run a tank or two of fuel through it, I can hang it up in the rafters of the garage with the rest of the lanterns. It's not one that I got to count on to work every day, so I just wanted to see if I can take these two free lanterns and put them together and make one out of the two.
It's a challenge.
The two vents, this one's got some bigger chips around the edge of it. This one looks a little better, so I think I'll clean up this vent while I'm waiting for that paint to dry a little bit out there. I don't know though, this one's, let's hit it with this Scotch-Brite a little bit and see if that stuff comes off of it. This one looks really, yeah, I don't know if somebody at some point,
It's like it's been sprayed or
yeah,
something.
spray painted that or something. And actually, that looks way crustier on there. This one looks a lot better right around there where the two parts of the vent come together. So let's just use this one. And if I get this all together and it works good, who knows? Maybe I'll find a BX or even a 220C fount, because all except for the fount, they're the same. And maybe I'll find another BX or another 220C fount that's good, that the rest of the lantern's no good, and I can just swap the whole top half of this lantern onto another fount. It's got something got melted on there. So if I can get it all together, run a tank or two of fuel through it, and then hang it up and save it, and maybe someday I'll find one that needs everything but the fount, and I can just swap the two of them out. Alright, that'll be good enough for that. I think of the two cages, that's one Dad said was leaning really bad.
Just need to be forced off to the side.
They're pretty comparable other than that though.
Yeah.
I guess this one's leaning the other way a little bit, so I don't think it makes very much difference
This one breaks when you straighten.
which one we use. We'll just square one of them up a little bit here. That looks decent enough. Good enough for this project. So, I'm gonna start making one pile of parts that I'm going to throw back together into a parts lantern, and another pile of parts over here that I'm going to try to make work. Those both had the same check valves in them, so it doesn't matter which part I use on that. I think I've kind of got a sorted pile over here of parts that'll go back together. I'll use this burner that's got one wrong burner cap on it, but I'll see if I can get one of the correct burner caps, unthread off of this and put on there. Well, how big a deal is it to have one incorrect burner cap? I don't know what that's. That almost looks like it's off of a kerosene Coleman lantern, but it threads right on there. Well, I wasn't able to get one of those burner caps off, but I was able to get the generator popped out of there. So let's pop the tip off of that real quick and clean it up while the paint's drying on that fount, and then we can get this thing all put back together and see. Huh, I can't see daylight through the tip. That's surprising.
Did you say that's steel?
No, this one doesn't have a steel generator in it. I've seen steel generators. One of ours has a steel generator in it.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
But this one does not. Tip's clean. I can see daylight through there. Can't see anything through there. Let's spray some carb cleaner down through there. See through it now.
Good.
Sprayed a bunch of carb cleaner through there and I can see all the way through it now. It's got a packing of some sort in there, but I'm not going to try to fish it out of there right now. I can see daylight all the way through there. So we will just put the tip back in there. Doesn't have to be tight. You can just use a pair of pliers, just snug it. That's enough. It doesn't have to be torqued down tight. I'm going to have one wrong burner screen on there. I can see all the way up through there. It looks pretty darn clean. Now I'm going to go get that fount and we're going to see if we can put this thing back together. Okay, I'm going to start putting this thing back together. The paint's still a little bit tacky, but it's good enough for right now. So let's see here. Got our valve assembly. Ooh. That's, of course, starting to get snug right in a position where I don't want it to be. I need it to come around about 2/3 more of a turn. Right there. I'm not going any farther. Poor old valve wheel's in rough shape, but I'm going to use it. It does have the steel directions disc on it, that painted white steel directions disc. There we go. Now we gotta set the burner cage down on there. Let's see here. Since I didn't take that little eccentric tube off of there on this one, then that means I got to put the cage and this all together there at the same time so that you can turn the whole thing to thread it in there. If you take the little tip cleaner lever out and that eccentric block out of there, then you can just set the frame on there and then thread that down on there and then put it back together. But when you take it out in one piece, it's got to all be threaded back down on there at the same time. Right about there. And snug the little jam nut down until that cage is tight. It doesn't have to be ridiculously tight, just enough to keep it from wiggling around. Now, let's thread this burner back in there. Once you get down close to where it's threaded in there all the way, you gotta start watching in through that little screw hole for your hole in the air tube to line up with the screw hole there. Right there, and that's right where it's snugged up, so that fits together well. Then you gotta get this tiny little screw threaded in there. Okay. Now I can put this generator in there. Well, it's moving up and down. It seems like it's gonna work. That ought to work there. Now, this pump leather was already pumping pressure when I took it out, so I'll just dip it in my Marvel mystery oil here to get some oil on it. And that check valve seemed like it was checking and working when I just blew air into it with my mouth, so thread one of those stems back down in there. They're both the same size and both in just about the same condition, so get this pump back in here. Finger over the hole here and we'll pump a little bit of pressure in here. And I will open up that fuel valve and see if we hear a hiss or not. It's hissing. It stopped when I turned the tip cleaner up. Started again when I turned it back down. That makes me think that it just might work. These two old lanterns that everybody walked past and looked at, but nobody wanted to bother with. I might be able to make one working lantern out of the two of them. Alright, I'm to the point now I can move out of the lantern vise here. There's nothing left that needs to be held down securely here. And the other lantern, I'm just going to throw everything back together finger tight on it so it kind of looks like a lantern, and it'll go up in the rafters out in the side building to be saved for parts for future lantern projects. Okay, I can already tell that this video is running long by the amount of time I've been out here recording, so to save a little bit of time, this one piece fuel cap gasket looks good in it. I'm just going to throw that one on there. We're going to put a little bit of fuel in here, and since the solder is right on the bottom of the tank, I'm just going to put a little fuel in, pump it up, and let it sit there with some fuel and some pressure in it while I tie the manholes on it and everything, and see if I see any moisture around the bottom of that weeping out.
I'm gonna empty that can.
Yeah, we're finally gonna use the last of this vintage can of Coleman fuel. It won't even fill it up all the way, but it'll definitely be plenty to get it running and see if it's going to work. I'm pretty confident at this point that as long as it doesn't seep any fuel, actually I'll just leave the cap off of this and set this over here and let it evaporate the rest out of there, because it's going up on our vintage fuel can shelf. But yeah, seeing what I've seen now, I'm pretty confident that it'll light right up and work, so long as we don't have any fuel weep out around the bottom of it when I pressurize it here. I'm going to pump some pressure in here so that it's got a few minutes to sit there with pressure in it, like I said, while I'm tying the manholes on. Let it sit there with some pressure in it, and then we'll double check and make sure that that base is not seeping any fuel out. Oh, I probably should shut the valve off.
That creates a leak.
Yeah. It is, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but it's bone dry around that now, so we'll let that set for a few minutes here while I'm getting a pair of manholes tied on here. I don't think it's going to leak, because that's the one that when I took the cap off had pressure in it already, so it was holding a little bit of pressure, not much, but it was holding a little bit of pressure when I opened it up, so that makes me pretty darn confident that it's not going to leak now. Like I said, the condition of this, I'll run a tank or two of fuel through it over the next few nights at home, then I'll burn it dry, and this one can go up in the rafters, and I'll keep my eye out for a good BX or C fount that I can just swap all these top parts over to. Alright, the manholes are tied on. The bottom is still bone dry. Now when I started pumping pressure in there, I had the valve open, so things might get a little burny here when I start burning in these manholes, because I don't know if I it looks like I kind of flooded the manifold with some fuel, so it might get a little fiery here when I'm burning these in. Well, no flare up, so it must not have pumped too much fuel up into there. Oh, I'm positive the camera won't be able to pick this up in here, but this is the Coleman sunrise globe that was on one of the lanterns that was in my video where my Uncle Bob bought me a bunch of lanterns at a auction. I'll put a link to that video. This was on a lantern from the 1970s, and I believe the sunrise globe is supposed to be from the 50s, but it's close to the right time period for this. I think this should have had the straight line Coleman instead of the sunrise, but since I've got this globe, that's the one that's going in here. Well, moment of truth. Let's see if this poor old beat up crusty lantern that everybody walked by and wouldn't even take for free will light and burn here. Well, it did something there. One manhole was burning, not the other one. There we go. There we go. Look at that. Looks like the tip cleaner needs turned a couple more times, but let's thread the valve out here, get some fresh liquid fuel going up through there. And then we'll give the tip cleaner a quick turn or two here. Oh, and that one manhole's burning brighter than the other one because that's the one that's got the larger diameter burner cap, and the other one's got a smaller diameter burner cap with a tighter weaved mesh in it. So I'm guessing it's just restricting the flow a little bit more, so we're getting a little more fuel on this side than we are on that side. Let's throw the cap or the vent back on there. I do have a ball nut that'll work on that in here, if and I can find it. It's kind of rusty and crusty. It came off of one of those lanterns that my Uncle Bob bought me at the auction too, but it's a correct ball nut instead of a square nut off of something else. It's burning brighter on the one with the bigger burner cap than it is on the smaller one. But it's burning.
Yeah,
I've got more burner caps here, so I can swap that one out. I just wanted to get it going with all parts from those two freebie lanterns, and I did. There is absolutely nothing on there now that's not from those two free lanterns.
Very nice.
So I'm going to let this one sit here and burn, and I'll throw the camera on time lapse while I throw all the pieces back together for the other one, just so that we got a parts lantern to hang up all in one piece. Okay, we got the parts lantern all put back together. This one's sitting there burning nice. So I got one to take home. I'll take this one home and I'll do like I always do. I'll fire it back up this evening. I'll get a shot of it in the dark at home. And then this one will go up in our rafters of the side building with all the other old lanterns to be a parts lantern. And there's still a lot of good parts on there. I was telling Dad when we were putting it back together, even things like that little set screw, when you need one, if you just got lanterns that you know that the lantern's no good otherwise, at least you can just rob the parts that you need. So I'll turn the camera back on home tonight and get a shot of this once it gets good and dark tonight. Well, I'm out here at home. I lit the old BX back up a couple hours ago and it's sitting out here burning really good. It's held pressure all afternoon. I didn't even have to pump it before I lit it up again, but I'm going to have to get it shut down and put away. Let's point the camera up there. There's a bunch of lightning and it's going to be storming here pretty soon, so I'm going to shut this thing down, put it away for the night. There's another lantern brought back to life. Thanks for watching, folks. Please hit the like and subscribe button. If you enjoy the content we're putting out and you want to help support our channel, the best way you can do that is just to let the ads play when they come up. If it's a really long ad, watch the first 30 seconds. I go in and remove about half the ads from each episode that we put out. So thanks again for watching. We appreciate each and every view. Come on back next week. We'll have a video of something here for you to watch.